so update to a video I made 6 months or so ago, where I made the very bold proclamation that I was going to teach myself how to draw in an effort to fight against the rising AI takeover of the human soul. And I come to you today in admitted defeat. In my previous video, I talked about the things that make people successful, right? Discipline, patience, and consistency. And I will be the first to tell you that in this venture, I did not employ any of those philosophies. So we're going to go over what I've done in this little drawing pad here, which is admittedly not super exciting because, again, this was a failure on my end, and we'll talk more about that as we go through the book. But where else to start but at the beginning? This is where the first couple of little doodles I did, and they're not anything special, right? Nothing in here is going to blow your mind away, but there's some bits in here that I really do like I'm a big fan of this little face over here that I drew, this little kind of Omni-Man looking guy. He looks very angry. I do like that. I mean, the nose is a little wonky, but I do like the overall look of this little face. I think that's the best part on this page. And then, of course, all the little line bits and pieces. And I think, of course, you guys will have to be more objective in this than I can be, but I think that my lines themselves have gotten better, but other than that, I don't know. So, the next page, just some more doodles. There's nothing on this page that I'm really, overly excited about, but, it's just doodles, right? None of it's super special. We've got more stuff over here. Again, it's all just shapes and essentially nonsense, right? Just squiggling about with a pencil just to put ideas onto the page, just to get a feel for the mechanics, I guess. But yeah, again, nothing. I think there's nothing that truthfully, I don't think there's anything on this page that's all that redeemable. I think my methods were just not good with those. And then, of course, we've got our good boy Philip over here, the dinosaur creature. We've got a robot little thing. I will say, I do think this hand is okay. I think this is a decent spot for where I was when I drew that. But again, like I said, I was not disciplined, I was not patient, and I wasn't consistent. And you'll see as we go through. But again, just some more shapes and stuff over there. And then over here we've got some shading that I was practicing. And then we've got a couple of skulls over here. I do like this top one. This alien looking dude. He's pretty cool. And then at some point, I got to this state, I guess. Of course, we've got more bits and pieces over there. And then I got to this state where I would sit down, and I want to say for about a month, I was really, I made a serious effort to just sit down for an hour a day and just try. But I got to this state where I was so, how do I put it? I was just displeased with my ability. I was very frustrated with myself because in my life, I think I've been very spoiled with my ability to pick up a hobby and just sort of be solid right away, right? I don't say that to brag or anything, but throughout the entirety of my life, if it was a sport, if it was art, if it was science, if it was math, I've course of my life where I have been very, very adaptable. I've been very good at just picking up a new thing and just rolling with it and being, competent at doing that thing. I remember specifically an instance of this was in my high school there was an archery club, and it was like a $25-$35 fee or whatever, and I went to my mom and I'm like, this sounds really fun. I really want to try archery. I've never shot a bow before. This sounds really cool. I don't own a bow, but they have bows, right? Like they go to a place in town that has a range and they have bows that you can rent, and the school will pay for all of it, whatever. That's beside the point. So I go to this archery club and I'm in it for a year, and my very first meeting there, they line you up on the line and they teach you how to shoot. This is, feet at shoulder length, whatever, all that stuff, and that makes sense. And they were like, don't be too discouraged if the arrow doesn't go where you want it to. And they give you 3 arrows. I shot all 3 arrows, and the grouping, as they called it, was actually very good. I got all 3 of my arrows within an inch of each other, which is very good. They weren't bullseyes or anything like that. They were down to the left of where the bullseye was, but the grouping was very good. So that was one of those things where it's just like, I was somewhat competent just right away, and I could feel the dopamine response from that just immediately, where it's like, okay, yeah, I get this, right? It clicks for me. I did it for a year, and I got better and better pretty much every single week, I think, that I did that. And eventually I dropped it to go and do something else, because that's just what I did as a kid, right? Like, I couldn't stay in anything for very long. I'm still kind of that way, where I can only do one thing for so long before it drives me crazy. But that's just how I am. So when I get to this point and I'm just struggling to really connect with it and make things that I see in my head, right? Because like visually I can see like all this cool stuff that I'd love to be able to do, but I cannot translate it through my hand into the paper. So you'll see here in a second where I go from doing like little scratchy doodles and stuff, and then it's gonna look like a psych ward patient. I just start doing this over and over and over and over again, right? So it's just shapes, right? Like, you see here, it's just triangles and squares and circles and lines all over the place, because I'm just trying to figure something out. Like, I'm trying to brute force my way through it, I think. And it's just page and page and page of this. You'll see up here on the top, it's June 5th on this one. This is still a point where I'm still kind of doing these little, doodles and whatnot. They're not as scratchy anymore, right? But they're still just, they're just little doodles. There's not like any, plan, right? Like, I've got this little face guy down here. He's pretty cool. I've got this little hammerhead. That's nice, but it got to a point where I was just so unsatisfied with it all, and I just keep doing all this. We're in June 7th here, and then this is June 9th, and so already, right, like, the consistency is falling apart a little bit, but it's just shapes and shapes and more shapes and lines, right? And again, I do just struggle to come up with something that I actually wanted to draw. Like I didn't have an idea in my head. I didn't have an image that I wanted to make, so I would just start doing this again, like repeatedly ad nauseum. And I think that maybe pushed me away from it even further. Like as you can see again, it's just lines and little shapes, more lines. And now we're on June 18th. And then this is June 21st. It's just a bunch of lines. And then some squares and stuff. And this isn't even dated, but we've got whatever is going on over here. And then this is stuff that I actually did kind of enjoy. I've got like this little weird sort of, I don't know, face looking thing right here that I, tried recreating a few times and just couldn't get it quite right. But that one I did like drawing this little freak right there. But again, it's just more lines, shapes and stuff. And, I'm not dating them to this point. Over here, I tried to draw the Superman logo. So that's, fun. And then again, some more shapes. I forgot this little cat thing right there. This shape again from before, this alien thing. I tried to recreate that. I wasn't quite getting it. Some squares, some triangles, a couple of letters as well. Because, I also need to work on my handwriting. But, yeah, it's just, I'd sit down, would not have something come to me and then just, draw circles or squares. And, like, I do think these circles are a bit better than the old circles from before, but again, you'll have to tell me. And then here, this was a day where, I actually wanted to just go in and, like, try drawing weapons, right? Like medieval weapons and stuff. So, you got a sword and a hatchet and a battle axe and a shield. And, you got this little guy with a dagger and a shield up here. And, that's like, cool or whatever. But again, it's just like, when I sit down and I try to go in and I try to make something work, it feels like there's a physical barrier between my brain and the pencil, right? Like it's almost physically painful that I just cannot seem to figure it out. So at this point, I had gotten very spotty with it. Like I'm going almost a week between sessions, and then eventually I haven't touched this thing in like a month and a half, maybe more, which isn't fair to me or what I want to do. I think this is my favorite bit over here, July 16th. This little hammerhead shark-looking thing. It's not entirely anatomically correct, but I do think it's something, right? Like I like this little hammerhead guy right here. He's cool. And then, I got more like oval kind of shapes over here. But, yeah, at this point, I'm just so out of it, right? Like, I just cannot get myself to sit down and actually do something. And, like, I followed, or I watched, I didn't really follow, but, like, I went looking for all kinds of advice and, like, stuff like that, and tried to do what I saw in some of these quote unquote basic tutorials, and I still just could not get it going. So more shapes over here. This little heart cloud shape thing. We've got the suits in a deck of cards over here. More like elf, goblin, creature things. That's fun. And again, it's just shapes all over. We've got this little resistant. I was far from patience, and I think my discipline was honestly pretty bad because, I just wasn't going in with a focus. I was not going in and picking a specific skill that I wanted to work on that day. It was just, mostly just vibes, right? So I just go in and screw around, and like there is some value to that, right? Like just, free form, figuring it out. There is value in that, but perhaps not for what I wanted to get out of it, right? So again, just more shapes. We've got Slenderman down here. Shout out Slenderman. I don't know if there's a double page. Doesn't look like maybe there's, I don't know. But, just different shapes and bits and pieces. We've got like this weird creature up here that I tried to draw and just couldn't quite figure out. Like, I think maybe I tried to jump too far from like the 2D shapes into like a 3D more, more detailed style. I think that was also part of the issue, but we've got some like dragon heads over here. And again, just shapes and lines and shapes and lines. More shapes and more lines. We've got more of the elf character there. Showing up. More lines, of course. And it really does look like just the ravings of a lunatic in here. And maybe it is, right? Maybe I've lost it. And this is the last page, actually. This is the last one I worked on. And again, it's not dated at this point. We're in like October, I think was the last date that I put anywhere in here, but I don't know where exactly it is. But this page over here was what I was just, mucking about with before starting this video. And I genuinely do think, at least horizontally, my lines are getting better. I think they're improving. My circles, maybe not so much. My triangles, obviously, they're still atrocious. But, just drawing a tree sort of look, and this, whatever this shape is, and like I've not used the paper as effectively as I possibly could, but it's just one of those things where it's like, if I'm not immediately good at something, it is so hard. It's unbelievably hard for me to stick with it, and this is a skill that I want to learn, and I think I owe it to myself to put the work in to make it work. And so I'm going to keep trying, right? Like I haven't touched this in months, but I am going to make a new effort, and I'm going to keep trying to learn. I'm going to keep going because I still stand by the fact that in order to combat the rise of AI, the rise in this corporate theft of the human soul, which I don't want to get too nuts into my thoughts on it, because I don't think this is the channel for that. But I do think AI is fundamentally an attempt by rich people to steal the human soul. I truly do believe that, because the way that I view art is that art is the language spoken by the human soul. Well, maybe not just the human soul, but art is the language of the soul. And I don't think that is a language we should so willingly and happily sacrifice. I don't think that is a language we should allow to die. I don't think that is a language we should lose the ability to speak. And so, in my fight, in my own personal anarchy, my own personal rebellion against, this corruption of media, this slopification, if you will, of all that is is good. In my pursuit of that fight, I am going to figure this out. I owe it to myself to figure it out, and I will not let AI or anyone else rob me of my God-given right to do whatever the hell I want with art. So, that being said, I don't know if I'm gonna keep posting about it. I don't know if I'll give you another update in 6 months. I might. I don't make a promise there, but I am going to figure out a routine that works for me, that I can see consistent results with, and I am going to keep at that routine every day for the next 6 months and see where it leads me. I might not get anywhere, right? I might not get anywhere. I might fail again, you know? But that is okay. As we talked about in the last video, when it comes to success, you are going to face setbacks, you are going to face hardships. And I know that, to some people this is all, malarkey or whatever, right? It's all bullshit. I get that, I do. But I think these are important things that we need to, as, a collective, as humanity, we need to be more comfortable with being uncomfortable, and this makes me very uncomfortable. I hate the way that I feel when I try to learn this. I hate that it makes me feel so inadequate. I hate that I feel so defeated, but I am going to do it anyway. So